Hey, Helen here, your host. Great to have you along for the second season of The Beautiful Side of Grief, where we continue to hear from people from all walks of life who have faced or have been involved with heart-wrenching loss and who have come out the other side with so many positives to share with others. I know this may seem like an impossibility for you right here, right now, to be in that space. And believe me, I understand. I lost my own gorgeous 18-year-old daughter and only child in a car accident. Yet, here I am 4 years later, sharing my own journey and those of others in the most heartwarming and joyful way. Each and every one of my guests share their own beautiful insights and their strategies for getting through their grief. And through these stories, I hope you'll find your own way to deal with your grief in whatever form that may take. I'll pop my guest links and any free resources in the episode notes, along with my website address if you'd like to know more about the energy work I do, as that was my lifesaver in my own grief journey. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now let's see who our guest is this week. My guest today, Lee Atherton, is a certified end-of-life grief support and resilience coach with over 15 years of experience. She is honored to help people live their dying by discovering the beauty in the process and the gifts to be found. She considers it her calling and privilege to journey with people through the white waters of grief, navigating the chaos until they reach the tranquil pool of stillness. That describes grief so well. Coach Rev, as many know her, is also a compassionate officiant whose goal is for those in attendance to feel as though they have just participated in a powerful and meaningful experience led by somebody who knew the honoree well. She also recognizes the demands of anyone in the helping or caring professions and offers coaching and programs in resiliency for chaplains, funeral directors, clergy, and first responders. After receiving specialized training, Lee also serves public safety officials as a local fire chaplain and critical incident stress management team member. In this capacity, together with her trained dog Shadow, Lee supports first responders who have experienced a traumatic event. Shadow provides moments of joy and helps Lee provide comfort during an otherwise stressful time. So you can just tell from her bio that we are in for a treat today. So thank you for joining Lee and myself as we navigate the white waters of grief. And I hope you will pick up some valuable information along the way. And may your own journey be filled with love, light, and hope. Hi, Lee. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you today about the incredible work we're doing supporting people around grief.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honor.
You're so welcome. I just love exploring the different aspects of what people do and how they do it. And what you were doing adds so much to that whole area of grief and first response and what people are going through in times of crisis and traumatic events. So it's my privilege. I'd love to start with you sharing with us what led you to this career path and what it is you actually do.
Sure. So it's kind of a funny story about how I got here. I felt called to ordained ministry as a second career. So I was in my late 30s when I felt that and needed to get my Master of Divinity degree. But before that, I needed to have a bachelor's degree, and I didn't. So I needed to go back to school and start with that part. The first class I took was a crazy philosophy course. We had lots of fun there. And I met another woman who also was there for the same reason I was. And she knew at that point that what she wanted to do after she was ordained was be a hospice chaplain. Yeah. Good for her. I'm impressed. I thought it was a great thing. And she, along the years, because our paths were parallel to each other in terms of when we got into seminary and graduated and such, she often would say, I really think you'd be a good hospice chaplain. You should give it a try. And I kept saying, yeah, no, thank you. That's what I wasn't doing. She apparently saw something in me that I was not seeing. Fast forward a whole bunch, I think it was maybe 7 years. She was in hospice work. and I had just ended a position serving a local church. She was going on an extended vacation, and she said, "Will you cover for me?" No. Short time. You can do anything short time, can't you? And I said, "Yeah, you're right. Okay, sure." And as they say, the rest is history. I fell in love with the work, and it's just to be there to walk that journey as someone's closing their life and to help them live their life instead of die their ending.
Yes.
It's just what an honor and what an opportunity. So I worked in hospice for many years and stopped when my dad died. And then when it was time to sort of recreate after I pulled my life back together, I had always been a life coach, held the two worlds at opposite ends, life coaching for what's next, how are you going to, right? And hospice, end of life. And I found a coaching program for coaching at end of life. And that just was the perfect meld of the two favorite things that I did in life.
Yes, I love this.
So I left hospice and started Coach Rev at the Crossroads, which was combining those two worlds. We're at a crossroads in life when death is in our midst.
So Coach Rev at the Crossroads, that's your coaching domain, is it? Yes.
That's my business, yeah. So Coach Rev, from Coach and Reverend.
Yes.
And Crossroads, being that place, that fork in the road where what's next.
I'm so glad you went seeking and found this because, yes, you know, in the few opportunities that I've had to be with somebody in their end of life, it's been such a huge, huge privilege, and it's such a special time. And I think it goes beyond what people imagine, and you can make it such a beautiful experience. And I think it scares a lot of people. Would that be a fair comment?
Absolutely. It's a fair comment. I like to tell the story, though, of a young man I met in hospice when I was a hospice chaplain. He was somewhere right around 40 years old. I don't remember his exact age. Had a fabulous Christmas, really enjoyed it. But by New Year's, he found himself in the hospital with a diagnosis of stage 4 bone cancer.
Wow.
Talk about life turning around in an instant.
Yeah.
So he came on our hospice services. It was a terminal diagnosis. I met him somewhere in January. He was only on our services through early May when he died. But in that period,
that was fast.
Very fast. In that period of time, I learned a lot about him. I learned some of his favorite things to do in life. I learned who his favorite author was and asked him, what do you still want to accomplish in life before you die? And he had two things. He wanted to go fishing one last time, and he wanted to see his children again. He had two children, 19 and 20 years old, right around there, from whom he was estranged.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that short amount of time that he had left to live, I tracked down that author, and a God incidence, I call it, not a coincidence. The author
I like that.
Happened to be traveling locally to see his mom and agreed to come and meet my person. He came.
Wow.
It was a surprise for him. So here's this gentleman. He's laying in bed. He had to be in a nursing home because there was no one to care for him at home. And in walks this person that he has admired since he was a child. That was fun. We did bring him on his one last fishing trip, even though it was a pushed down a rocky road while he was in his wheelchair. He got to fish again.
Great.
It's profound, Helen. I reached out to his children, and it wasn't a hurry up right away. This happened, but over the course of several weeks, we got to the point that the children came and met him at the nursing home. I was there to help facilitate the conversation. By the time they were done, each of them said to the other, "I forgive you and I love you."
I've got chills and I've got tears.
Me too. And it's years later that I'm telling this story, but every time I share it, it's new all over. And that's what my ministry is all about.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because the power of forgiveness, that can just put somebody so much at peace. And it's never too late, whether it's before or even after somebody has passed. I still believe that the power of forgiveness actually sets you free.
Yeah.
Sets you free. And yeah. So let's talk about the power of resiliency, because I know for me that was a key in my ability to be able to deal with my daughter's death. And we have an author here who's actually a resilience coach or researcher here in New Zealand. She did a TED talk that actually made the top 20 in the world, speaking about resiliency during times of the pandemic. And I read her book because she also lost a child. And so this book was all about resiliency. So let's talk about your role and the importance of people having a resilience coach.
I came to resilience coaching somewhat indirectly, my work with first responders, and wanting to find a way to support them in the midst of the pandemic and in all the work that they do. Yeah. I also, being someone who officiates funerals, I was meeting with funeral directors in the real heyday of the pandemic, when they just were so overwhelmed. And I would see these friends of mine, dear friends of mine, who I was seeing something in them that I had never seen in terms of overwhelm and not knowing how they were going to make it to the next day even. Funeral directors who might have 1, 2, 3 funerals in a week, having 1, 2, 3 funerals in a day. And yeah, just so hard. So I was asking myself, what can I do for these folks? And I realized that not only in the pandemic, but in general, professionals who serve others at end of life have a real heavy job.
Yep.
And it's a calling. People don't go into these jobs for the pay. That's for sure. In the United States, it's not
worldwide, I would imagine.
Probably. And so there's something much deeper that brings us to this work. And yes, in the times of chaos and crisis, and the world's turned upside down and shaken like a snow globe, how do we keep going into that work day after day with that same passion and drive that brought us to the work in the first place? And I believe that the only way we can do that is to build our resilience muscles, to be stronger in what makes us as unique individuals, because there's no cookie cutter recipe. What makes us whole? How do we find balance in life? How do we find what feeds our soul? What fills our well of what we keep giving others, so that we can be our best, so that we can not fall apart when something triggers us on the job.
So that's how we do it. Those are the things that we're looking at, trying to answer and really know ourselves so that we can be able to cope. So important to have that balance, because These are unsung heroes very, very often. You know, they go in and what they're faced with is unimaginable
Right.
and often unimaginable. And they're so good at supporting the people on the scene and those around and associated with it. But very often they don't get that support back themselves unless they're in a very aware system and environment.
Mhm.
And so, yes, it comes back to each individual, doesn't it?
It does. So when I'm teaching my first responders in a resilience workshop or even the course that I do afterwards, I begin by asking the question, what is your favorite thing to do of all time? What makes you laugh? What makes you just feel on fire?
Yeah.
And I let everyone answer. When everyone's done sharing, I say, and when's the last time you did that? And often the room is silent because they haven't done it recently.
Yeah.
But don't we need that side of life as well?
More than ever, because we're so busy doing what we think everybody needs us to be doing, and we forget to fill our own well. We forget those childlike things that make us happy. We forget those moments.
Right.
And that's the difference. What is it you think first responders especially need to be aware of when they're keeping it all together, helping others?
It's hard to answer. There are so many pieces. I think the thing to remember is they are human too.
Yeah.
Right? All of us in the helping professions feel like we'll carry it all. We're strong. We can do for you. Even myself, I'll hold your grief for you. But you know what? It gets to us too, because we're not made of some superpower, right? And a reminder that it's okay to say, I need to take a break.
Yeah.
Give yourself that choice.
Sorry, do you think it's about not stuffing it down? Because so many people think they have to be strong and, okay, I can deal with that. And what they do is they keep layering and layering and layering all of these traumatic events or experiences that they've been in the midst of, not realizing that, you know, with them are really powerful emotions. And when you just keep stuffing those inside of you, at some stage, the lid's going to, or something's going to overflow, and it's often going to overflow either in a breakdown or overwhelm or an extreme reaction or something like that, isn't it?
Right. And there's an analogy I use. Think of carrying a backpack.
Mm.
And for every traumatic experience that you have, and in the case of first responders, you've mentioned it's many, put a rock in there every time. And that's what we're doing when we hold it in ourselves. It's as if we're putting another rock in that backpack. Eventually, you're going to break. You can't hold that backpack anymore.
Mm.
So you need to take it off and unload a bit.
Yeah.
I share oftentimes my own story of carrying and carrying and carrying and being the strong one who didn't do my best at emptying the backpack. And I did. I crashed. There was that one straw that broke the camel's back that put me over the edge. And I couldn't work for a couple of years. So it's better. I encourage folks, do it bit by bit. Don't wait till it breaks you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might not get back from that break.
Yeah. Really important. And what about resilience in regards to when people are at the, end stages of life? How does that factor in?
Yeah. When people are at the end stage of life, the resilience sort of falls back on what you've thought of, what you've spoken aloud of your wishes.
Yeah.
And having had conversations and deep thinking about what do you want? What really do you want that end of your life to be like? And then when we've taken the time, and I tell people, told my kids when they were teenagers, you have to start thinking about this. Because think about it when you're well, when you're in control, when you're not full of anxiety and fear and worry about end of life. Because that's the resilient rock, the foundation that you can say, I did think about these things when I could. And I'm holding on to that now. That's the foundation that I can stand on moving forward. That's the resilience that helps me go.
And that's a peace that you get when you've got all those things sorted, because like you say, if you haven't thought about them before and then suddenly you're thinking about, oh gosh, does my partner know how to do this and sort this, and are they going to be able to access all this other information? It's endless. There's a lot to think about.
There is.
And when the earlier you do it, the better, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Right. And people don't often stop and think about, let's say, pain, for example. End of life can often include some level of pain. And one of my questions for folks is, what amount of pain do you want to be in? So if you want to be in no pain, that could very well mean that you're not able to carry on a conversation with your family, with your loved ones.
Yes.
Right at the end. Or do you want to deal with the pain and try and live through some pain so that you can be aware and say a very meaningful goodbye? I had one woman answer me, and this surprised me, but it really was very profound. In one of the workshops I do, I asked that question, and she said, "Oh, no doubt at all. Don't give me any pain medication whatsoever." She was Christian. She was Roman Catholic. And for her, Jesus Christ died for her on the cross. Jesus Christ suffered. How could she possibly think about not suffering in turn for him when her time came? Right? When you're running into the ER because a traumatic event happened and you may not live, have you thought of that? Or even when the hospice diagnosis, when the terminal diagnosis comes, so many things to think about.
Yes, and I'm just going to add another piece here, because sometimes with that traumatic event, you may not be able to speak or articulate your wishes. So if you don't have them sorted beforehand, then it's very, very difficult for people to know what your exact wishes are if you haven't had those conversations, if you haven't put it down somewhere.
And it's not just the medical wishes.
No.
Right? Your spiritual wishes, your emotional wishes.
Yeah. And resilience for those who are left behind. Do you also work with people that have suffered these huge losses that have just devastated them? And what's the role of resilience in that stage?
I have. And I often don't use the word resilience when we talk about grief, or when I'm with people who are grieving, unless they've shared a story of another traumatic event in life that they made it through. Then I'll use that as, well, there was something there that helped you through, some level of resilience that you had. What can you bring to now? But I think at least early on in the stages of grief, the emotions are all over the map. One day you're good. The next moment you're back sobbing again. And then I give it another 15 minutes and you're angrily yelling at whatever, that there isn't necessarily space to intellectually think about how have you been resilient in the past and what can you bring to now. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I think, yes, because like you say, when people are going through those early stages, yeah, they don't want to think about being resilient or how that plays into it. Or, a lot of people don't even want to think about anything really. They just want to feel. They just want to try and just get through the next minute, the next hour, the next day. And so maybe the resilience part comes in a bit further down the line when you can actually put some strategies in place to help you move through that journey. Yeah.
When you reach that tranquil pool of stillness and peace.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which does come, eventually does come.
Yeah, I know. It seems like so far away in the unimaginable when you're right in the midst of it. But yes, at some stage it does come. And yes. So I want to explore with you now how people discover the gifts in dying, because gift is an interesting word and one I love because, I'm all about the beautiful side of things. Gift to me is synonymous with beautiful. So take us through how people find gifts in grief and dying.
One of my greatest wishes is that everyone who sees death on their horizon, we all have it there, but when you see it, it's closer to you. My greatest wish is that each and every one of those people have someone to sit down with to talk about what's important in their life, what have been their joys, their successes, and what do they want to leave as their legacy. And as I spoke about that young man earlier, what is there still to accomplish? When people get a terminal diagnosis or they're elderly, they close the book. That's it. I'm just here waiting for the end now. But that doesn't have to be the case. No matter what that diagnosis is, it's living that final chapter of life instead of dying that final chapter. And living is something different for everyone. But when you've got someone you can sit down with, a coach is someone trained to ask the questions that help you discover those gifts. Someone who is able to just sit in the silence or sit in whatever it is that you're feeling or experiencing and be able to give you a safe, non-judgmental place to do all of that. And to be open and honest and real with yourself. To discover what's there.
Actually, as you were just speaking, and I could just see you facilitating this and just the pure, just relief that some people must feel just actually going through that and being able to share with people their joys and the things they're most proud of and what they're going to miss the most, and just having those real heartfelt conversations and really just opening up from the heart and just saying, this is how it is.
Yeah. I often hear people say, I don't need a coach. I've got my best friend, or I've got my mom or my husband or whoever that might be that I can talk with. But you know what? I've yet to meet anyone who is able to be 100% open, because
impartial.
We're trying to protect those people we love. So we might not tell them all the big, bad, ugly stuff that we want to be able to say, or tell them our deepest fears. We don't want to make them afraid too.
Yeah.
Who can hold that space?
And you don't know what you don't know. So you don't even know what questions to ask to elicit that sort of information, to start those conversations.
Right. If we don't go there, then maybe it's not real. But
yes,
it's real. And the person who is dying does think about it.
Yes. Endlessly, yes.
And the person who is there to be a friend and a support thinks about it. So think about it together, right? Because isn't a burden shared a burden halved?
Oh, yes, such good advice. How easy or how difficult is it to take somebody from a state of absolute chaos in their grief to a place of calm? And is that a long process?
Easy or difficult? For me personally, I'm not sure easy is the word I would use because there are really difficult moments, heart-wrenching moments. The word I might use is rewarding, fulfilling, profound is a word I find myself often using.
Okay, let's go with that.
And being such an honor. I've walked those first days and the longer period of grief with moms who have lost their babies.
Yeah.
Their little ones.
Yeah.
Would I choose to be doing that with anyone? No. Would I choose for anyone to be going through that? No, not at all, ever. But when I'm able to sit there and hold the space for someone where brings tears to my eyes to talk about it, to let that grieving person feel the fullness of their grief without having to hold back, without worrying about protecting someone. At least for them brings a measure of healing. Might be a teeny measure today.
Yeah.
But when I can look, I'm picturing a mom right now whose 18-month-old son was run over. She was there. She was there. And when I first met her, she was strong. She was I got it all together because everyone was swooping to her house. She had to be the hostess. She had to not let people see her break apart because then they would break apart. She felt like she had to take care of everyone. And I said, you know what? Let's go for a walk. And we left that space. And I said, I don't care what we talk about or what we do on this walk. Here we are in the woods. Nobody's around. Just be what you feel like being. And eventually she just sat down and sobbed. She took her fist at God. Why? And was able to admit how angry she was at, it was her mom, how angry she was at her mom. She forgave it. And her countenance, it was maybe 3 hours we were together, but her countenance afterwards, she was still holding her head high, but you could see a whole different measure of, I'm not even sure what it was on her face. She looked more in control.
Yes.
When she was pretending.
Because she could speak from the heart without judgment. And I think that's so important.
Right.
You know, nobody was going to condemn her for saying she was angry at her mom or that she was angry at God, or how could they take her beautiful baby, 18-month-old? And that's what we hold back because we're so trying to do everything by the book of what other people, what we think grief should be and you know, whatever we've been conditioned to. And really, we don't do us. We don't do what we really feel. I did that. I was so busy at coping and trying to make sure everybody else was okay. And you know, and people who listen to my podcast regularly know that it was in my car. My car was my safe place. My daughter was with me in my car. Her spirit was there. I knew it was there. But that would be the place that and I can feel it now, that I would just have. I would just cry. I would just cry, not for any reason. I just cried because I just missed her so much. And I still do. And it's not that I'm not coping or I don't understand or anything like that. It's just that this is how grief sits with you.
right.
just comes up in many different guises, doesn't it?
It does. And so to answer your question, is it easy or hard, or how do I do it? Whatever it is that lets me be in that space and lets the grieving person do that. Seeing that change in countenance at the end,
Yep.
that's what makes it easy.
And I think it's about trust, isn't it? It's like when people can trust the person they're with, like yourself, when they get to that point and they feel safe and they feel protected and they can trust, then they let the barriers down and then they let the heart speak.
And I'm not afraid to hear whatever they have to hear, and I'm not going to be offended by hearing anything they have to say.
Yeah.
And I think that is a piece of what lets someone open up, is knowing that you're not going to hurt me.
What have you found to be some of the most effective resources to help people either in the end of life stage or in those initial stages of grief or even just past? What are really good resources that are your go-tos for people?
I think the resources I go to tend to be the ones, well, let me back up a bit. Each faith tradition
Mm-hmm.
has their sacred text.
Mm-hmm.
Each faith tradition has their forms of prayer, their treasured music. So depending on who the person is, that might be the go-to resource.
Yes. Yes.
So having my toolbox of what those are. And then beyond that, just some general words of peace and comfort. The style of music tends to be the same. So someone who doesn't have a faith tradition and doesn't have that to draw on, I'll bring wisdom writings from around the world. I'll bring music from around the world if someone is a musical type of person. If they're a nature type of person, I'll find some of those words of comfort in the world of nature.
Yeah.
You know, the deadness, the cold, the raw that we see in winter always breaks forth into springtime.
Yes. Yes.
Scientifically, we see that year after year. So someone who's science-based, I'll use some of that. So it's different depending on who the person is.
So it's really getting an understanding of where they're at, what their faith may be, and getting to know what that they actually relate to. That's so helpful and useful because, you know, you can direct people to all these websites or different tools. But, you know, if they're not ready for that, and they can't, grief
There's
is
no one tool that works for everyone.
No, and sometimes you can't even read or absorb anything in those initial stages either. Maybe down the line you can. So yes, what gives you comfort? And I love the idea of working out whether it's music or nature and things like that. I hadn't thought of that before. That's beautiful. Yeah, love that. So let's now talk. You know, you deal with a load of different belief systems and faiths. How do you navigate your way through all of that?
Part of it is that I've been doing this work for quite a while, and having the resources in my toolbox and there are a couple of actual, like, physical resources, books. Here's what this faith tradition believes about death and dying and what happens next. So I've got my encyclopedia, so to speak. So I'll go to that and reference it. But a lot of coaching is asking the questions, and people in there answer their own questions as well. So it's listening to them and then reflecting what they've shared.
Yes. Yeah. So you're allowing them to come up what's right for them. Yes. That makes so much sense. Now you have a beautiful companion who helps you out with your work. Tell us about Shadow and the important work that he does.
So Shadow is an English lab. He's Black. And he came into my life a little over 4 years ago when I needed a service dog for PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I trained him. He's got some really amazing skills when he notices I'm stressed or upset, despondent, whatever. I've recovered from that. Not completely. I have my days when he needs to be in that role again. But he does so amazingly well at just having an intuition of what I need that I didn't want to lose. I wanted to share it with other people. So Shadow and I have been trained as a crisis response team. We serve primarily the first responders in that role, but there's even beyond the training that he had for a service dog, there's more in-depth training for the crisis response work that he does. And then because he is trained to support people in times of difficulty, he comes to funerals with me. He comes to meet with my families with me.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And he's got a way about him. So I just officiated a funeral this morning. In her 50s, a middle-aged woman died, and her dad and her sister and her niece and nephew were the family, the surviving family. And Shadow and I came in, and he does his usual thing, just kind of looks around, wags his tail, who can I go say hi to, and is eager with some people. But as we got closer to the family, he just kind of walked over and sat in front of Dad and laid his chin on Dad's knee and looked up at Dad with the most soulful eyes.
Oh my gosh.
And then the niece and nephew, who are teenagers, he went over and he flopped down and laid on his side and said, "Scratch me."
Wow.
What is this intuition? Another person who was in deep grief at a crisis here in the States over the summertime, a condominium had collapsed in the middle of the night. And Shadow and I responded to that. And he dragged me, literally pulled me, "You've got to come over to this person." And he walked over to this woman who was she was sitting and kind of curled up into herself. And he just laid down on her feet. And I said, "Is it okay? In case she didn't like dogs or was allergic." And she said, "Yes." Actually, she didn't say yes. She just nodded her head a little bit. And it took about half an hour. But eventually she stroked Shadow a little bit. And then it was a bigger stroke. And she started to open up to where she was sitting. Never spoke to me for that whole half hour. I just was sitting on the floor in silence. And finally, she looked over at me and she said, "Thank you. I feel better." That was Shadow.
Yes.
On that. And I said, "Oh, you're more than welcome. And I'm here to hear your story if you'd like to share." I would like to speak about it. And she went on to tell me that she had gone out. I don't know if she was visiting a friend, whatever. In the condo were her husband, her only child, and who was a daughter, and her son-in-law, and her 2 grandchildren, the only family she had. And they all died in that condo collapse. Who would have known had Shadow not gone over and just laid on her feet and just stayed there?
Wow.
Long as needed.
Who would have known?
So that's Shadow.
Wow. No, I've always heard that animals play a huge role in helping people heal and helping people feel good. And, it is just that unconditional love and support that they're able to offer, and that comfort and the intuition. I mean, I had a cat when I had very severe Crohn's, and this cat always knew when I was in a lot of pain, and she would just not sit on me because obviously that would hurt. She sat right tucked up next to me. And she would just stay there with me for the duration and help me through it. And after Tal had died, was so excited. We just shifted into a new house and we were renting it. We just shifted in there and we'd only been in there a few days. And she was so excited because finally she could get herself a cat. And she wanted to go to the SPCA and get a rescue cat. And I said, okay, well, just let us get unpacked and then we can go down and sort that out. And of course, her accident happened in between. So about 6 weeks after, I went to the SPCA and this cat was in reception. And it was like it was talking to me. It was in reception because the other cats were bullying it. But I just was attracted to this cat. And I said, oh, can I take it out of its cage and hold it? And they said, it's not very cuddly. But it just allowed me to take it out and it just cuddled up into my arms. And then I put it back in and I thought, okay, I better go and have a look at the other cats, But no, this one had stolen my heart and it had been abused. And so with my energy healing, I was able to make it take a lot of that baggage away from the abuse that it had suffered. And now, it is the smoochiest cat ever. Whereas before, when I first got her, she used to just hide. She didn't want anybody knew, she would just hide. But yeah, the power of her, she used to just hop on my bed and not just hop on top of my bed. She used to burrow under the covers. Yes, so I could feel her. And I truly believe that she was a gift to me in that time to help me through that. So yeah, I definitely believe in the power of animals and how beautiful that you have Shadow to help you with that, because I bet Shadow is the most perfect icebreaker as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your kitty, I'm going to share this just because it came.
Yes.
Tal chose your kitty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I truly believe that. I truly believe that she was going, Mom, this one. She's kind of bossy like that. Even now, when I do things, it's like, no, no, you're not going that path, you're going this path. And I feel it very strongly. And I know, for some people don't understand that connection, but I've been fortunate enough to have that connection right from the get-go. And that's a beautiful part of my life. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about your blogs, because you've got some beautiful blogs too on your website that can help people out. And I really believe that, they are well worth taking a read of. But there's one in particular where you're welcome. There's one in particular that you talk about the advice you received about introducing your children to death early on. Can you share that with us?
Oh, yes. I was a church secretary, and the pastor, he was a great man, and he was someone who took every opportunity he could to help me grow, both as a person, as a spiritual person, just in so many ways. And I don't remember the exact situation, but the topic came up, children and death. And he said to me, death is natural. It's such a natural part of life. But so many people are afraid of it. And here in America, we're nicknamed a death-denying society. Oh, gosh, I know what made it come up. Duh, hit me on the head. My mom was sick. She was on hospice.
Oh, minor detail.
Right. It was my brain for a minute there. So how can I help them get ready? And he said, bring them to other funerals, other wakes and calling hours, people that they don't know at first. And then people, someone in the church that they do know a little bit, but isn't a big deal. And at the time, my kids were young, 4, 5, and 6, I think they were. And so, yeah, we went to a wake and I said, we're here to let the people who are still living know that we care about them and that we're sad for their loss. So it's talking to kids on a kid level, but just made it comfortable for them, not scary, something that, it's okay to do and it's helpful to do. And you can even laugh when you're there because you might have a funny memory. And then when their grandmother died, and I raised my kids in a 3-generation home, so their grandmother was a very big part of their life day to day.
Yeah.
They were okay with it.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid, and they knew they could ask whatever questions.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Introducing our children to death early on. And I actually spoke to a funeral director, Andre Roop, and they actually live above the business. So his little girl has been, she often pops down, where dad's working. And he said she's just wonderful with the people when they come in. She's a beautiful distraction, but she's just this beautiful little girl that just gets on with life, and death just happens to be a part of that. And I think it's so important for us to understand that it is a natural cycle of life, and it can be incredibly heartbreaking how it happens sometimes, but definitely it is a cycle.
I was just going to say, children have, if we hide it from them, they know that the grown-ups in their life are upset.
Yes.
Kids, their development is such that they 9 times out of 10, if not more, think, I did something wrong. I'm a sad person. Look how upset they are. Or if they know that it's because someone died, nobody will talk to me about this. It must be really, 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 really scary. And they become terrified.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
Yes.
The unknown for kids is so scary.
And it's a good opportunity if you do have pets and the pet die, just to get them used to that whole scenario of how that all works, and make a little celebration of life for the pets, and share those memories of what you most enjoyed about that particular pet, and what made you laugh and what made you sad, and all those sorts of things there. And I think that all helps and just eases the way into the next level. And it gets people talking about it. Talk. I think we so need to not make death a taboo subject, or one that we only talk about when we absolutely have to. Yeah. All right. Oh my gosh, incredible conversation with you, Lee. And we're going to wrap it up because we've been talking a long time already. Time's just
probably wow.
I know. It's been just an amazing conversation, though. But I want you just to share with us now. I ask this of everybody I interview. What is the best thing that's happened to you either today or in this past week?
Today. Let's see. Today, the best thing that happened was being able to go and open the office for my partner. He's a psychologist. And so just to let him off the hook for a piece of it and be able to get up and go and have everything all ready for him, his cup of coffee on his table. And all
beautiful. That is so awesome. I love that. Yeah. And that would have meant a great deal to him as well. All right. When you're having a day where a moment when something turns to custard, goes wrong, how do you pivot yourself out of that?
I have a quote. My favorite quote of all time is from a philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. And it is only when there is chaos within that you can give birth to a shining star.
Oh, I love that.
Custard. I like that. I had never heard that before. But when that happens, it's, what's the star that's going to be birthed here?
Yes. And I also liken it to winds of change. That's how I liken it. When things are hugely chaotic, I actually now welcome that because I know it's out with the old and in with the new. And I welcome that. So yeah, that's great. I love that. Okay. What is the one thing that you're most proud of in your life to date?
Getting my master's degree and becoming an ordained clergy person. And my 3 kids.
Yes.
Both together.
Yeah, congratulations. Because to do that in your late 30s, to embark on a totally new career and one that's not easy to do, it's going to take you some time to get through. That really is the test of whether you really want it or not. And I'm so grateful that you did do that. And I'm so happy you're able to share this beautiful work with others of what you're doing. So yeah, I'm happy for you too. I am proud. Okay.
One question.
Sure.
What's the best thing that's happened to you today or in the past week?
Oh, so talking to you definitely has to be the best thing. We had a few hiccups getting here and we needed to, take some time out for a little bit. And I was so excited about interviewing you, and especially after I'd read up about you, and I just thought, please, please, please let this interview happen, because I know life gets in the way. And when you booked and I saw that booking come through, and I went, yes. So now to be talking to you, yes, that's the best thing that's happened to me today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. What takeaways would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Whatever experience you're having in grief is okay and normal. There's hope for a better day down the road. And there are lots of people who care about you and support you and want to see you have happy days again.
Wow. Beautiful. Sometimes we can't see those things. And it's very, very important that we do, in the great pieces of advice. And Lee, for anybody who's been listening that either wants to get hold of you as a coach, Coach Rev, or wants to be supported on their grief journey, or just wants to know more about what you and your beautiful shadow do, how can they get hold of you?
The best way is through my website, which is www.coachrev.com. And that's coach like a soccer coach, and Rev short for Reverend.
Beautiful. And I'll also have those in the episode notes as well for anybody that they can, if they don't get it here in, right now, they can go back and have a look and check that out. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, delving into those different areas of work that you do and how you support people. And I'm so in awe of the work you do, and so, so grateful, Lee.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's been an honor and a joy talking to you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to share it with others. Hit the subscribe or like button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, let me know how I'm doing, especially if there's more you'd like to know that perhaps we didn't get time to touch on today or in past episodes. And if you're after resources to help you out on this journey, or more about the energy healing work I do, hit the Healing to Be You link. That's the word healing, 2, letter B, letter U.com. So until next time, be kind to you, and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.